You treat me like a doormat? See for yourself how you get home again. I don't think much of petty revenge. But in this case I had no other choice. My wife Beth and I are both in our 30s. We have been married almost 4 years. Beth and I met in a support group for alcoholics. At first I thought our relationship was special, that we had met in a dark place and could live a normal, regular life together again. The first year of our relationship was wonderful. But then things got kind of weird. It started a few years ago when we got married. We were madly in love, or so I thought. But as time went on, I began to notice subtle changes in her behavior toward me. She became distant, cold, and indifferent. I began to feel like an unwanted guest in my own home. She insisted on staying home and I went to work. We don't have children, and Beth doesn't want any. Although she does the bare minimum around the house, she spends most of her time with her friends. At first I tried to ignore her, thinking it was just a phase. Maybe she was going through a rough patch, I thought. After all, a marriage like this is quite an adjustment for someone who has lived alone for a long time. I also had to get used to being practically responsible for someone. But after the first year, I realized that wasn't the case. In fact, it got worse. She didn't have a kind word to say to me, and she didn't even sleep in the same bed with me anymore. She didn't have a kind word to say to me, let alone closeness. The worst part is that everyone seems to know about our broken relationship. Friends, family, and even acquaintances have begun to keep their distance, as if my wife's contempt for me is contagious. They avoid asking me about our relationship. At first, I thought they were worried about me. But when my mother finally told me that I was a bad husband or my wife wouldn't treat me this way, I realized that she was telling everyone it was my fault. By my last birthday, I'd had enough. Beth and I were invited over to my parents' house. Mom immediately took Beth aside and they whispered in the kitchen while I sat at the dinner table with my dad. He began to talk to me about the cold atmosphere between me and my wife and gave me advice on how to behave so that our relationship would get better. I let him know that I had done nothing wrong. That I was going to work, even overtime, because Beth was always complaining to me that the money wasn't enough. I practically just work and sleep. My dad said that was my job. I just couldn't believe it. Lunch was a quiet affair. Nobody but my parents wanted to join us, and Mom and Dad just talked to Beth.